Meeting of the Finance Committee is called to order at 10:31 a.m. on March 19th, 2025. Before we go any further, I would just want to recognize March 19th. Today's my wife's birthday, so happy birthday, Sarah. She is home relaxing, not in a committee meeting today. All right. Roll call. Alderwoman O'Neill.
Present.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Present.
And Alderman Huntley. Present. We do also have Alderman Arnett joining us today. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Do I see a motion to approve the agenda, adding SA 2825 after approval of minutes, but before appointments and reappointments?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah. All right. Next item of business is approval of the minutes from the 26th, our last meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the 26th?
Move approval of minutes on the 26th of February.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay. Keeping us moving. Keeping us moving. We've got SA 2825 from OEM. This is a $15,000 federal grant going to the Urban Area Security Initiative. I know we're trying to keep everybody moving today, and in particular, our folks from OEM. So I'll just ask, are there any questions from my colleagues?
Do we talk about it?
Yeah, if there are no questions, go ahead. Yeah. Give us maybe the short version, just because
Short version.
we're trying to keep you moving too.
Kevin Simmons, the emergency manager for the city of Annapolis. To my right is Kyle Lepkowski. He's our grant coordinator. This is a grant for $15,000 as a part of the Urban Area Security Initiative. No match is required. And Mr. Lepkowski, can you tell them what we're going to use this grant for?
Good morning. $10,000 from the grant will be going towards technical rescue equipment and $5,000 to training and exercise.
And that is the Reader's Digest version of this grant.
Man, a few words there, Mr. Lukowski. Appreciate it. Yes, I see a question for Alderwoman Finlayson.
Thank you. The first purpose that you mentioned, is that going to APD or is that OEM that's going to be using it for that purpose?
That'll be the fire department, actually, for technical rescue. So that $10,000 will go to the Annapolis Fire Department. And what we're going to use it for is education and training We have some conferences coming up that we get a lot out of in OEM, and actually transportation and rec and parks, they also benefit from this as well. We take them along, and they can understand their emergency support functions better.
Thank you.
Seeing no additional questions, is there a motion to approve SA 2825? To favorably recommend, I guess I should say, SA 2825.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we give a favorable recommendation to SA 2825.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you very much for being here, Director Simmons. I know you got a busy day today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee.
Thank you.
Moving right along to our appointments and reappointments, we've got two folks for the Financial Advisory Commission today. We'll start, well, why don't you just both come up together if you're both here? Yeah. But we've got AP 525, Mr. Peter Vale, and AP 625, Mr. Joe Rubino. Thank you both for being here. Could I ask each of you just, we'll start with Mr. Vale. And if you could just each state your name, your address for the record, and then tell us a little bit about why you're interested in this and what you hope to accomplish on it.
Yeah, sure. My name is Peter Vale.
Oh, and make sure your microphone's on. It should have a green light.
To push it. There we go. My name is Peter Vale. I live at 1257 Washington Drive in Annapolis, Maryland, close to Highland Beach. I moved into Annapolis around 2017. I have been the head of finance organizations for the last couple of years, working mostly in corporate finance for for-profit companies. I was reached out to by Jim Cardillo, who I think has been a longtime participant on the audit committee and I think the liaison for the financial audit committee. And we have mutual contacts in that space. And, I wanted to, just provide my services to Annapolis and, get more involved in local government at a, committee level to start. Although I did apply for the finance director for Annapolis position, that still doesn't dissuade me from participating still the way that I was originally contacted to join, which was to be a part of one of the committees. And the Financial Advisory Committee is the one that seems the most appropriate for my skills, which is mostly long-term planning, budgeting, understanding and operationalizing finance for the people who I'm serving.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm excited just from looking at your resume. I think you'll have a lot of good insights for this.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Vale, you sound like you're far more than qualified, and we could definitely use your expertise. My question is, are you a city resident? You said you lived near Highland Beach, which is...
No, I am not. I live off of Arundel on the Bay Road near Thomas Point.
Okay, I don't know what the parameters are, but I just thought that should be clarified. Thank you.
Let's move on, and we'll talk to you both. We'll ask any additional questions of you both together. But Mr. Rubino, you want to introduce yourself?
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members. My name's Joe Rubino. I live at 3133 Starboard Drive, and that's just outside the city limits out in Anchorage off Bay Ridge Road. I'm happy that my daughter just bought my mom's house in West Annapolis, and where I was born and raised. So I'm a lifelong Annapolitan. I did travel around with the Navy for about 30 years. And when I retired, I ended up coming back to Annapolis, and I'm currently the Chief Financial Officer at the Naval Academy. I think it was Fred Sussman or a couple of folks that I knew with the city and on the board that first reached out. And I've been engaged with the city off and on over the years. Delighted to see some friendly faces from when I used to work a little bit more directly with the city. That's been a little while for me. So I'm happy to be back here and see you all. And when they reached out and talked about it, it sounded great to me to be engaged with the city again. If there's anything I can do to help, I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you. That's, yeah, I appreciate it. And if you can do that in your day job, then I think you're more than qualified here. So we'll be glad to have you. Do either of my colleagues have any questions for Mr. Rubino or Mr. Vale?
No, we're excited to have you on.
Yeah, you both seem very qualified for this. Alderman
you.
Arnett, did you have any questions?
I already sent a text message to Brent Sudsman, the chair of the FAC, saying, wow, two great new people.
I believe you were talking about that on our audit committee meeting yesterday, too.
Yes.
Or Monday, I suppose that was.
Fantastic.
Did I see a hand from Alderman Finlayson? Yeah.
Yes, I just want to say thank you to both gentlemen for volunteering. We've worked with Mr. Rubino for many, many years, and we're glad to have you back. I asked my earlier question because I didn't want any obstacles to be in the way of your appointments to this committee. So thank you in advance for willing to serve the city even more. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out today.
Is there a motion to favorably recommend AP 525 and AP 625?
I will make that recommendation that we give favorable recommendations to both appointments to the Financial Advisory Commission, AP 5 and 6.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Congratulations, folks. We're moving you forward to the full council. Appreciate you both. Okay. We're on to our legislation and talking about Maryland Hall for the Creative Arts fee waiver. Excited. I believe we have the director of Maryland Hall today, and not seeing anybody from city departments to talk about this, I don't think. So, Jackie, you want to come up? Could you just give us a bit of an overview of this project and why it's so important? Oh, I'm sorry. Two things. Can I ask you for your name and address before you jump into it? And then also just double check that the green light's on.
Oh, I thought it was on. Okay, now it's on. Thank you. Jackie Coleman, and I reside at 1 Park Lane in Annapolis, Maryland. And thank you for hearing from Maryland Hall today. We are engaging in a capital campaign and to renovate our building that was built in 1932. We are looking to do a full HVAC renovation, which would be a complete replacement of all of the heating units, and we would also be removing all of the portable air conditioning units, making the entire building much more comfortable for all of the patrons, the students, the audience members, the teachers, the staff, and even just visitors that come through to look at the galleries. And then in addition to that, we're also renovating our Bowen Theater space, which is directly below our main theater. And currently we are unable to program in both spaces at the same time because of a sound bleed that goes through. And yet we have many requests. During the course of our season, we are probably 95% full, and having many other requests that we're not able to accommodate because we can't book both spaces at the same time. So when we do this upgrade, which will make it more acoustically sound to be able to have programming in both spaces, we will be able to have more space available for the entire community, the city, the residents of the city, and any of the other patrons that come in. So that's really the overview of the entire project. We anticipate it to take about 1.5 years in its completion. And we have approached the city about potentially waiving the permit fees. I have some information about some history with past campaigns and the city, if that's helpful to hear. Yes, okay, I'm seeing some heads nodding. So we did do, this is our, at least that I'm aware of in my 3 years being here at Maryland Hall, our third capital campaign. The building is quite old, so there may have been one way back that I am not aware of. And in Act 1 and Act 2, we looked back at the data, and apparently in Act 2, which was in around 2018, the city had provided a grant for the capital campaign project in the amount of $163,000. My understanding at the time that was in lieu of waiving the permit fees. It actually covered more, I think more than covered the cost of the permit fees for that project at that time. Also, we have been over the last 6 years, I didn't have data going further back than that, but we receive an annual, just a general operating grant from the city, which we're very grateful for, typically in the amount of some occasionally $30,000. And then also, I just want to mention something that is maybe not easily seen, is that we are always welcoming of the city to use any of our indoor spaces free of charge when they're not being rented and they're available. And when we look back from now past to 2019, we realize that we have provided you $28,931 worth of free space use that we could have rented to other people that we could not because we were letting the city use it. And actually an even larger impact that we have, but we love having all of the festivals and events that the city puts on at Maryland Hall, but it does have a revenue impact on our bottom line. We have held 22 various festivals since 2019, inclusive of Juneteenth, Day of the Dead, the Pride Festival, Taco Fest, St. Patrick's Day Parade, MLK, and Annapolis Family Day. They all require us to pay strict attention to the amount of parking spaces that we are going to have available. And many times we're not able to actually host events, programming, or even classes because we're not going to be able to have enough parking spaces for the people that come. And there's other implications as well, but looking at that and looking at the events that we had to either not hold or potential revenue lost, it was equivalent of $70,000 of lost income over the time. So we're providing, what we can at Maryland Hall in support of the city. And I hope that you would realize this renovation will benefit city residents that engage with Maryland Hall in many ways. And in 2023, we, through one of those geo-tracking devices, we discovered that the Maryland Hall campus welcomed 114,000 visitors over the course of the year. So I hope that gives you a little bit of sense of the broad impact of the work we do. And these renovations will absolutely impact everyone that's coming into the building.
Can I ask you to tell one other story, Jackie?
Sure.
You had told me a little while ago about I don't remember the details exactly, but a piece that you guys had gotten that ended up getting ruined because you didn't have an up-to-date HVAC system. You remember what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Would you mind sharing the details of that?
Yes. Well, I'm not sure if I'm talking about the same thing. There's definitely been different things that I know exactly what you're talking about. I was just going to tell you about a piece of art that was recently warped because the air conditioner was not working properly in our gallery. But what I think you're talking about is the much larger investment that we made on a sound cloud that goes over the orchestra. You guys have probably seen it if you've seen the Annapolis Symphony Orchestra. It's the wooden paneling that's back behind them that helps push the sound outward. That was actually part of the Act 1 renovation, that purchasing of that equipment, which was a fairly significant purchase, and it's supposed to last, probably 12 to 15 years before you have to replace it. But because of the poor temperature control in the main hall itself, it started to warp, and pieces were potentially going to fall down onto the performers. So we had to start to use clasps and other interesting things to try to keep it safe. And we want to replace it, and we actually have a funder who is poised to replace it because he believes so much in supporting, this particular project. But we are holding off until we complete the HVAC renovation to ensure that we can actually trigger the warranty. We couldn't trigger the warranty the last time because we did not have proper humid control in the main hall.
So I'll say I really appreciate everything Maryland Hall does for the community. I appreciate this is just one way we can make it sort of catalyze some of this private investment here. But I also know we've been talking on the committee about sort of the most appropriate way to make sure that we do that. And just from sort of a process standpoint, does it make sense to just do it with this fee waiver? Does it make sense to do it through a grant? Does it make sense to do some kind of combination? How we make sure we fully account for the different ways we are supporting Maryland Hall and the way you guys have accounted for the ways you're supporting us. So I think that's what we want to focus our discussion on today. I'm just putting that out as a preamble, and then I'll turn it over to Alderwoman Finlayson, who it looks like has a question.
Well, Mr. Chair, after your comment, I'm not sure where we're going with this, The process is what we have now in place, unless you're prepared to propose a different process. The process is for them, any organizations, to come and make a request of us. And so I'll go forward with my comments. Maryland Hall has been a partner, and for full disclosure, I served on Maryland Hall's board many, many years ago, for many years. And if I remember correctly, Mr. Rubino was on the board, I think, at one time while I served there. That was all under Linnell Bowen's leadership. And actually, I was part of the team that hired Linnell in that capacity. But Maryland Hall has been a true partner to us. It is a historical location in the city that we should value, like we value all of our monuments and historical locations within the city. And so they bring, as Ms. Jackie has mentioned, a wealth of citizenry to the city, inside and outside of the city. We can't begin to calculate the amount of revenue that's generated by all of the events that are held at Maryland Hall. And that's separate and apart from all the festivals that she mentioned, but just with the concerts and the art gallery openings and such, there is tremendous value in maintaining this partnership with Maryland Hall. And so this is a very small token, I believe, of our appreciation and support for what they do. So I would make a motion that we give a favorable recommendation to R525. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's keep discussing it, and then we'll come back to your motion, Alderwoman Finlayson, but I see some questions. Oh,
I didn't get a second. Okay, but clear.
There's more questions.
yeah, I think we want to keep on with the questions and then come back to actually moving it. But Alderman Arnett, did you have questions?
Actually, I had a comment, and I'm glad that Alderwoman Finlayson is here. In the past, the way we've done these capital processes is that we do it by grant through the finance department. And I don't remember, Alderwoman Finlayson, do you remember? Because those were the first big one for Maryland Hall when we just got on the council. And it was over $100,000. I think it was quite a bit. And we carried it separately from waivers. It was, and there was another capital grant project that we were also financing. And I don't know whether the finance director has any wisdom. I saw Mike Melanoff go by. It's too bad he didn't come in. But there was a reason for doing it that way. We basically gave Maryland Hall a grant out of the city budget, probably out of the capital budget, and then they reimbursed us from that grant. But it was in order to keep it different from community grant type processes or normal fee waivers. Partly probably because they were larger amounts of money, but I certainly think that might be another way to think about doing this. I don't know if the finance director has any wisdom for us.
Looks like she does.
Yes, I do.
She's got her finger on the button.
Yes, yeah, Jody Dickinson, Finance Director. So I agree that in the past, we've done it as a grant. A couple of reasons. When you waive a fee, you're impacting revenue accounts, and revenue accounts are set, and the permit fees are set to pay for a service provided. So you're going to lower the amount of permit fees we show during the year that planning and zoning is, calculating to cover its time and expense. Second of all, if you do a grant, we can identify a resource like part of our one-time funds. Yes, we have this available now. We can't afford to make this additional grant for this purpose. And we add it to the budget. We recognize a grant expense. Even if money doesn't change, if cash doesn't change hands, we recognize it as a grant expense on our books and move it into the revenue account that would normally recognize it. And if you recall, We have such an agreement with HACA right now where we're doing inspections of some of their units. And for the cost of the inspection fees, we're giving them a grant. And so they don't pay the fee physically. We recognize the grant and we recognize the inspection revenue. So that is the cleanest way to do it. And knowing that we're doing it as a grant, we can use one-time resources for that. And that's cleaner in setting a future policy too, because if we're ever in a situation where we don't have excess funds to give, you can identify that cleanly with the one-time funds. Do you have the money on hand to do it?
Director Dickinson, can I ask you, do you sort of have in your mind a number of above which it makes sense to provide a grant rather than below which it makes sense to provide a fee waiver?
So on the other fee waivers we do, they're for police and fire time on special events, those kind of things. But permit fees are, and those are things we don't know in advance. Permit fees are developed in order to pay for the cost of the services in the departments. So it's a different situation. I would say if you're going to waive permit fees for certain developments, you better set a policy on how you're going to do it, because anybody who has a good project they're working on and they want you to waive the permit fee, you're going to have a lineup unless you set a clear policy on what you're doing. I would say in the cases where we're waiving fees that we would normally charge to any developer, we pay our own developer fees, permit fees too, as well. Like for City Dock, we paid our own fees. So I would say that when we do this for waiving a permit fee for a project, that we do it through a grant process, just like we did on the previous one that she cited in 2018. But that's just my recommendation. It's up to the committee and the council, but it's cleaner that way.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Thank you very much. I would be apt to make the motion to amend this fee waiver to a grant application, if we were able to amend it that such, or if we need to create an entire new piece of legislation. And we have Office of Law that can comment to that. I've had a lot of feedback from constituents when they saw that, and everybody has said, here's one person, one organization, granted, great partner, Jackie and I, tight as can be, right? So I'm not dispelling the fact that they're a great partner, but in order to move forward and to be transparent and have a policy in place, I believe that the grant option is a better option for us, so that everybody falls under the same criteria and we're not waiving fees that are paying for the service.
And this is kind of what I was trying to get at with my preamble. I think we're all sort of on the same page that we want Maryland Hall to be able to do this without having a financial impact on you. And it's just a matter of what's the best process for it. I was going to say, let's go to Ms. Bruder first, and then I see Alderwoman Finlayson has her hand up.
Okay. Cynthia Reuter, Office of Law Policy Analyst. A grant is a totally different animal than a resolution. I would recommend that it be a different piece of legislation and this one be withdrawn.
I'm sorry, Director Dickinson. Yeah, let's go back.
I
to
wanted to add, if we're going to do a grant, I would just ask the administration to submit a supplemental appropriation request with one-time funds. That's the way I would handle it. Wouldn't necessarily be legislation, but it would have to go back through the process.
And your thought, Director Dickinson, is that supplemental appropriation would come out of planning and zoning's budget? Because that's where the permit.
No, one-time funds.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You just said
we
that.
would just use our one-time funds that we have sitting in fund balance and allocate some of it for that.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Yes, this is the mayor's legislation. So I too propose that we withdraw, have asked that he withdraw it. And I'm not clear on why this came before us as the mayor's resolution without him consulting with the finance director, for example. So I agree, it should be withdrawn and we should have another piece of legislation that more accurately depicts the process that we want to put in place. So I will withdraw my motion didn't get a second, so it's a moot point. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to withdraw this, or
Well,
favorable recommendation. Okay, no action.
Yeah.
Make a motion
Or-
for no
or-
action.
Do we want to take no action or do we want to unfavorable?
No.
I think it's
Yeah.
appropriate, no action. Why don't we take action on something that we will request that it be withdrawn?
Okay. So no action. All right. Well, I'm sorry. I saw a hand up from Director Dickinson. You got anything to add before we move
Well,
on?
I'm working something through in my head, and I don't know if, and maybe Ms. Reuter can comment on this. Can the committee at this point give favorable recommendation to process this as a supplemental appropriation, even though we haven't processed the form for signature? And maybe we need to go back through that process because the city manager, the mayor, everybody has to sign that form.
I mean, we could have, it would be kind of not pretty, but I think theoretically we could remove the words "city shall waive certain fees required" and replace it with "city supports providing a grant required." But that I don't think that's
I think
worthwhile.
It's
Yeah.
probably not the cleanest way to do
Yeah.
it.
I think
Just-
we should work with the mayor's office to get a supplemental appropriation from the one-time fund coming before us that is the therefore out of this and keep all the whereases. All right.
Mhm.
Anybody got anything to add on this point? Oh yeah, Alderman Arnett.
Just a point of information. I actually think if we do it out of one-time only money as a grant, it's not going to slow up getting money. My one concern is I too think I was in an opera cast at Maryland Hall, but also think of Linnell Bowen, but also Mike Bush. I think everybody loves Maryland Hall. So my question is, we don't want to do anything to slow up getting this work done. If we do it through one-time only money directly, that actually may be faster, but I don't know. I just don't want it to slow things down.
Yeah. How would this impact your timeline, Colin?
Well, we are scheduled to start the work on May 27th. So we have been working with the city and put our permit, and they actually have started to review the permit. To us, the most important thing is we have the permit in hand. In terms of the paying for it, I think we have a little bit more flexibility because we do have bond bills and we have some other money that has, we haven't spent all of the money. I mean, we have, but we haven't, if that makes sense. So I think we have a little bit of time to pay the money as long as the permitting process can continue, regardless of whether we know whether it's a, waived or a grant.
Got it. Yeah. This is something we hear regularly that it's less about the funds and more about the uncertainty of our
Yes.
permitting process. We know
And it's
that is
very big impact if
Yeah.
we don't start on that date.
absolutely totally understand that. Ms. Ryder?
Yeah, could I suggest that you continue on the route that you were thinking, that you turn this into a resolution that shows that the council is in favor of that money being granted, and then that provides more certainty for Maryland Hall in the process going forward. So I can work with you on the language
Yeah.
as an amendment.
Yeah, I think unless you are looking at this and say, I've got the language on the tip of my tongue right now, and I'm trying to do that, and I also don't, let's wait on that. And either, hopefully we can have the mayor bring forward a supplemental appropriation, but if we don't get that by our next finance committee meeting, we'll have an amendment ready to go. Yeah, I think we should. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, seeing no motions on the table regarding R525, Finance Standing Committee will take no action on it at this time. We'll continue to work with the mayor's office to make sure that Maryland Hall can not have a financial impact on them from doing these renovations in the way that makes most sense with our finance system. Thank you for being here, Ms. Coleman.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I believe at this point, Alderwoman O'Neill has to step out, but she's recusing herself from talking about sidewalks. I know, so do I. But at this time, I'd ask our Director of Public Works to come up and give us some information about sidewalk repairs, the sidewalk capital improvement plan, and the other thing that I asked was the sidewalk metrics, because I think that's important. We were just talking about this at the audit committee the other day, but I know those are all part of our capital budget. So thank you all for being here today. And thanks for doing this on short notice. I think I asked you guys on Thursday or Friday of last week to join us. So appreciate you jumping right into this. The reason that I requested this be on the agenda is because when we all sat here and talked about our priorities for the budget, the thing that almost every member of the council mentioned was sidewalks. And it is one of the top things I hear about from folks. It spans a couple different of my priorities in the budget. And you need to do no more than walk down Duke of Gloucester and right in front of City Hall to see why folks are so jazzed to talk about sidewalks. So I'll turn the floor over to you guys. Thank you to educate us.
All right, let's start with some introductions. I'm Burr Vogel, Public Works Director.
I'm Betsy McKeown. I'm the Bureau Chief of Engineering and Construction and Public Works.
Allison DiMatteo, Engineer and Project Manager for the Sidewalk Program. I'm taking that over from Jennifer Fight.
And you two might want to pull your mic a little bit closer to you.
Got to get pretty close.
Yeah. I'm sorry, can you repeat your name one more time?
Sorry, it's Allison DiMatteo.
Got it. Thank you. Oh, so yeah, I think my goal out of this is really just for us to deep dive into this particular part of one of many of Public Works' CIPs so that the committee can feel totally informed about it as we come into budget season and really like drill into this one thing because it's clearly a priority. So I'm just hoping you guys can do some educating of us today.
So there's a ton we could cover. I'll start with about 3 introductory points that Allison had prepared, and then hopefully this can just be a dialogue into what, the citizen feedback you all have and the priorities and questions. So regarding the performance measure, we have 15,000 square feet is our performance measure. And over the past 3 or 4 years, looks like we do at least that on average, sometimes significantly more. And the reason it can vary substantially is there's a huge cost difference between re-bricking and doing sidewalk repair that we do in conjunction with our paving program, probably by a factor of 10 or so. But Allison can give you specific numbers. Budget is $600,000 per year for the sidewalk program. And to do a single block.
Director Vogel, can I ask you, do you know how long our budget has been $600,000 for that? I looked. Okay, we'll defer to all.
There we go.
Here. So forever. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
And none of us have been here forever, so we're in no position to dispute that. And then to do a single block of brick sidewalk downtown is about $100,000 or $150,000.
And that's one side of one block, correct?
That's for bricking.
Yeah.
It would be one side of one city block is anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000. It's very dependent on. It's very dependent on curbing conditions and utilities.
And does that include the granite curbs, or that's just the bricks?
It would include, for the 100 to 150,000, it would include the granite curbs. So if we are just looking for individual pricing, it's about double of what it is to do for bricking that it is to do concrete.
Right. Sure.
Just on a square footage basis.
Thank you. Sorry, Director Vogel, I think you had more.
No, that's it.
Oh, great. Well, do either of you two, I see your hand, Alderman Arnett, but do either of you two have anything you want to add?
Sorry.
Either of you two got anything you want to add on this?
I don't think so, unless I just can answer specific questions.
Great. Yeah. So I'll start with one, and then again, Alderman Arnett, I saw your hand, so I won't bogart the mic for too much. In terms of meeting that performance metric, I heard you say, it varies so much largely because some years you're doing a lot more concrete and some years you're doing a lot more brick. If you were to do all brick, it would be impossible with this budget to meet that performance metric, correct?
Correct.
Yes. How do you think about how to balance the amount of brick sidewalks that get done in a year versus the amount of concrete sidewalks that get done in a year?
So the way it's determined is the concrete sidewalks typically follow the paving program. So as we're going into paved roads, we'll go in and assess the sidewalk conditions, the handicap ramps, and that will get repaired, replaced in those segments before we repave. So that we were doing work on one city street at a time, and then we're moving out. With the bricking, it's mainly based on complaint and observations that we have gotten from our crews.
Oh, you don't want to say that. People are going to start complaining. You got to watch out.
And then ultimately, we have an iWorks program where they assess the condition of the bricking every 4 years. Currently, the area of the bricking, we're limited to do work because BG&E is coming in to do improvements, and we don't want to do those improvements and then have it torn back out by BG&E. So we are a little bit limited on bricking, and we're kind of working with BG&E on certain streets where maybe they aren't going to be here for a while, that we can come in and do those streets. And we just try to balance how much the cost is that we're spending on concrete versus brick, because the brick will consume the budget very quickly.
Sure. Alderman Arnett, I'll go to you.
Thank you. I would submit, Mr. Chair, that sidewalks is not a monolithic topic, and you can divide it into at least 3 components, each of them distinct. So there is repair of sidewalks, existing sidewalks, and that is split between clearly brick and concrete. And by the way, I have to mention, thank you for my new sidewalk. It was so much easier to shovel snow with a smooth surface rather than the up and down. But that does bring up 2 other facets. One is snow removal in a city where there is a high number of elderly people who just can't quite get to that, and particularly not quickly. So we have, in the case of the snow storm, once removed, the condition of the snow was such that as soon as you stepped on it, you created ice. It wasn't powder, it was slushy. And that made it almost impossible for anything other than the sun to remove the snow. But of critical importance to me in my ward is there are prominent streets, Chesapeake Avenue comes to mind, that do not have sidewalks at all. And I would submit that sidewalks are a life safety issue. Pleasantly, there are a number of younger families moving into Ward 8, and I see them out with their children in whatever vehicle they're pushing them in. In my day, it was called a perambulator. But they're out in the street. And particularly on my street, 6th Street, which does not have a stop sign at Chester, the motor vehicles come down and they make their right-hand turn because there's no stop sign. And the moms with the kids or the joggers from the Naval Academy come jogging down and expecting the car to stop. And they go, and they're all in the street because there is no sidewalk. And so I really, when I talk about this at budget, I think there are really 3 different things that we need to be talking about. Obviously, repair, but even there, that is an ambiguous issue because as residents in various parts of the city, not all, we're supposed to be repairing our own sidewalk. And in fact, Mayor Moyer years ago offered one of the best deals ever offered to the citizens of Annapolis for $25 a year in addition to their water sewer fee. The city was going to take over the responsibility for repairs. And people screamed up and down that it was a tax, not a fee. Well, whatever it was to repair sidewalks. It was to repair it by proper standards. Years ago, my house was on the first Eastport Home and Garden Tour, and my two pieces of sidewalk were so bad, I got Sackcrete and repaired it myself. And Frank Biba at the time said, "Did you put in the appropriate rebar?" Rebar? I don't know about rebar. So again, I'm suggesting that this is a very big topic with a lot of life safety issues surrounding it, a lot of recognizing the nature of our citizenry, the age of our citizenry in some places, and the financial means of our citizens in other places. I got bids to repair my sidewalk for the house tour, and I said, I'm doing it myself. The lowest one was $2,000.
So I
two sections.
Strongly agree with Alderman Arnett about the importance of adding new sidewalks and the life safety impacts of that. I also agree with you about the importance of getting our sidewalks clear. And I need to sit down and talk with you about some legislation I've got on that. But I do want to make sure that we keep our discussion today to sidewalk repairs, because as you said, this is such a big topic. I think if we started talking about where we should put in sidewalks, we'd be here all day. So let's limit ourselves to sidewalk repairs today. That said, I think you bring up a really good question that would be worth illuminating for everybody. Could you all explain to us where city residents are responsible for doing their own sidewalks versus where the city steps in and does those repairs? Essentially, what is the city responsible for maintaining? And beyond that, where are there situations where citizens are responsible for maintaining it, but the city will come do it and charge them for it? So could you just kind of give us a breakdown on that? And I'll note, I see your hand, Alderwoman Finlayson. Well, I'll get to you right after that.
Sure. I'll cite the code here. It's outlined in code 140450, sidewalk maintenance by abutting owner. And essentially it says that the abutting owner is responsible to keep the sidewalk clean of manufactured debris and snow. If it's out of repair or in bad condition, to immediately barricade that sidewalk that poses a safety hazard, provide lighting at night, and then notify us, and we'll fix it. Yeah. And then
So there's a difference here that I want to highlight.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Maintenance
trying to
versus
get at.
repair. Repair is the city's responsibility.
And then I also wanted to mention that for new sidewalks, what we are doing now is doing new CIPs for new sidewalks.
Right.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, Director Vogel, just for anybody watching, can you make a really clear distinction between what is maintenance and what is repair?
I would refer people to the code. Where those things that Betsy just mentioned, keeping clear of debris, vegetation so that the sidewalk can be traveled. And then if there's a significant repair required, to let us know. That's what the code defines as maintenance.
Alderman Finlayson, you want to ask your question now?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I wanted to agree with Alderman Arnett in that we are not allowed to charge, but it was the state who came in to tell us that charging the $25 for sidewalks was tantamount to a tax, and that they had not given us that taxing authority. So if there is an interest in pursuing that, then it's the state route that we must travel in order to get legislation that would empowering legislation to allow it. Excuse me. My question was, there seems to be different materials for sidewalks. In my ward, particularly on Forest Drive, there's a sidewalk that is a blacktop sidewalk. that is, I guess, 6 feet wide, and that residents have now taken to driving on it because it looks wider and it looks more like a street than a sidewalk. So please explain to me how that is possible and what we're doing with those sidewalks when they're being used in what particular communities, and how we can bring light to the purpose of these sidewalks.
I believe the sidewalks you're referring to, or the paths you're referring to along Forest Drive is a county road. So those installations of those walking trails and materials would be based on something that Anne Arundel County would issue, not the city of Annapolis. We don't allow asphalt sidewalks. Walking trails would be something different, but they would tend not to be within a road right of way. We would maintain brick or concrete.
So the sidewalks parallel to Forest Drive are all county properties?
That is correct.
Okay.
I want to. Can I stick? Or were you going to ask another question, Alderman Finlayson? Because I have one related to what you just said.
I guess I would clarify. If there's an interface between State Highway 665 and Forest Drive. So State Highway 665 is, of course, owned and maintained by the state, and then Forest Drive proper is the county's.
What I am referring to is Forest Drive, and my frame of reference is there was a time when the walking path from my ward, from the Newtown community by water, getting to Annapolis Middle was a challenge. And so I called together the county executive, the mayor, Nestor Flores, who's in charge of Forest Drive, and they brought their public works as well as their DPW staff. And we all walked that path from what was Soul Restaurant all the way down to the middle school to determine the condition of the sidewalks and the walkability for students. So that's my frame of reference. And I thought our public works department was taking on at least part of that challenge, meant making sure that that was a clear walkable path. So now you're telling me something different. I just want us to be consistent, to know to whom to go to make sure that that path is walkable for students. You've given me some other information about the asphalt, which I appreciate. Thank you.
So I think Alderwoman Finlayson's question was basically, can we make sure we're totally clear on who's maintaining Forest Drive, right?
Yes, I want to be clear whether it's our public works department or the counties, because our public works department took on that responsibility then. And now it sounds like we don't have that responsibility. So under the previous director, and I think it was Director Gerald at the time, it may have been prior to his tenure.
We can look into that and just verify.
Okay,
So
well,
Alderwoman Finlayson's question reminded me of something that is probably not the most important thing we're going to talk about today, but it was a question I got from a resident. She was asking me about why some of the older sidewalks look much more yellow and some of the newer sidewalks that have been put in are much more sort of a white or gray color. And that was something she noticed consistently, not that they had changed color, she thought, over time, but that perhaps it was a different kind of concrete. Does that ring any bells to you all? Has there been a change, and we're talking, over a long time period, in the type of mix of concrete that the city uses for sidewalk?
I can't.
Yeah, but none of us have been here long enough to be able to speak
Okay.
intelligently to that. I will tell you, concrete does kind of change its appearance over time.
Sure.
But also there's a pretty good chance that the actual mix has also changed.
Could you guys explain to us? I know we do this comprehensive road evaluation every 4 years. What is the assessment process like to understand the condition of our sidewalks? And then how do we go from understanding that to implementing a repair program?
Yeah, so right now we use a company called iWorks, and every 4 years they'll come in and they assess for cracking, scaling, obstructions, and faulting. And they do like kind of a rating system to show us where it's the worst and where it's the best, really. So we would go down the line and decide this is the worst condition. Right. So we would change it. We're also so I'll bring this up now. So we are also working to do an ADA program, and the company that we're looking at now would do hopefully an assessment ultimately of the entire city. And
so I'm sorry,
they would likely take over the sidewalk assessment.
Got it.
There, because they would also show specifically any obstruction, scaling, cracking.
But that's something I think, Director Vogel, we had talked about. That's not something you're looking at for this FY26 budget, right? And would be something in the future? Or
what do you mean by that?
You were talking about doing this ADA study. Is
Right.
that something that you guys are going to be
So
looking
currently
at?
it's not a CIP, but we've been granted $40,000 to start the project.
Got it.
And we're looking at potentially doing just the historic district to get us started. And they would assess sidewalks and handicap ramps for walkability to help bring us into compliance for an ADA transition plan. And then the idea would ultimately be to scale it through the entire city.
Love it. I appreciate hearing that. That's phenomenal. One of the things we were talking about in the audit committee the other day is how I saw your head perk up there. How these metrics get developed, that they're sort of meant, the performance metrics, that they're meant to be, in an ideal world, it's sort of, okay, we understand how much we have to maintain. We understand what the lifespan of each one of those, and I'm not just talking here about sidewalks, I'm talking about all of our infrastructure assets. We understand what the lifespan is. And then from understanding those two things, we can think about how frequently they need to be replaced, or in this case, repaired is the word we're using. How does that process go for sidewalks for determining how much we have, how long they last, and then how often they need to be replaced? And am I understanding that process correctly?
I don't think that's correct as it pertains to sidewalks. That is something we look at. Let's use the roads, for example, right?
Yeah.
So we do have, I think, about a 30-year cycle, and so there's a nice correlation there between the number of miles, the funding, and so on. And so you can connect those dots. Not so with sidewalks. Sidewalks are probably a little bit of a different, a trickier animal because under the right conditions, constructed properly, a concrete sidewalk might last, 100 years or 200 years, right? So I think it's a little bit more of a I think what we're ultimately driving at here is what's the right funding level for this program.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think we can kind of look out there and say, are we happy with the condition of the sidewalks we have? And if we're not, let's start bumping up the funding. I think we can make it that simple. And let's say we were to go from 600,000 to $1 million, which is a reasonably large jump. That's about all the larger I would recommend, for a year or two, because it's hard to just throw money at something without the resources to manage it and make sure you're spending that money well. So that's about as large as of a jump as I would recommend.
Thank you. Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, sort of when do we reach a limiting factor of staff time? So thank you. Did I see your hand up, Alderwoman Finlayson?
No, but now that after that last comment, my question is, I do have a question. Do we have a plan if we were to increase that funding? Do we have a plan, or would we wait until this evaluation is completed to create a plan to show the need for the increase?
So I want to first make a quick clarification. The plan we've been talking about is an accessibility plan. It's an evaluation of how easy it is to get around our city on our sidewalks, where there are obstructions, where there are handicap ramps, and may or may not be. The condition evaluations we already have. That's something that is done on this 4-year cycle. So we given additional funding, we would come up with a plan to address additional repairs. Most significantly, it would be kind of a change on the concrete sidewalks, where we're going along in conjunction with the paving program, because now we would have funding to tackle some sidewalk repairs that would not necessarily be performed at the same time we were doing repaving a given segment. But of course, as Alderman Arnett mentioned earlier, there are kind of two different flavors here, right? We have that concrete sidewalk repair, and then we have the downtown brick repair, and it might be most useful to think about them separately.
Well, let me ask the question again. Is there a need for an increase in funding for sidewalks? And to follow up, are there sidewalks that are in dire need of repair or replacement? I know we're talking two different things, that we do not have the funding or the staffing to accommodate.
I'm going to offer that that's subjective, but for the most part, if there's something that is absolutely critical, and an immediate safety hazard, we're able to repair that right away. So the other piece of it, right? I think we're talking about downtown. You just do see a lot of unevenness, and it's just a matter of how quickly we, as a city, want to replace those block by block. But yes, if you were to say, do you think we should invest more money in sidewalks? I would give my opinion as yes.
Can I ask
Work
you?
here is done.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. Did you have another question?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sure there's a delay. And I guess what I heard was, give us more money and we'll figure out how to spend it, as opposed to showing the need and then adding additional revenue, which is a preferred approach, but generally, of course, everybody's going to tell us they could use more money. We want to know if there's a plan in place to show the need for additional revenue. And there are sidewalks all over the city. And I am sure if all the aldermen were in the room, they would all say that their wards have sidewalks that are just as important to their residents as downtown. So, I would keep an eye open for all of the wards, not just Ward 1, even though it is the most visible. But I am looking for a plan, not a, need for money and we'll figure out how to use it approach.
Speaking of need for money, I was looking at this, part of what prompted me to want to have this discussion was digging into this particular CIP. And we have in it a pretty good chunk of prior approved appropriations, right? There was like $3 million in prior approved appropriations before the FY25 capital budget. So sort of just what's the deal with that? This is for the sidewalk repair SIP that we're talking about.
Do you mean by unspent prior approved?
That normally, I think that is what we see in here. That is those remaining ones.
I don't believe that's the case.
Okay,
So,
it could be because this is
available.
such an ongoing one. All
Right.
that makes
You'll
sense.
see in some of our CIPs, they kind of carry on indefinitely, and so that prior approved just grows and grows and grows and grows, even though you're spending that money.
So it's because this is such a continuous one. That makes perfect sense. Thank you for explaining that to me. I have another question, which is really more directed at our finance director. And it is, does it make, obviously this is a capital project, right? But what is your opinion on what the balance should be between paying this out of our bonds versus PAYGO versus capital reserve? And how has that been determined in the past?
Since I've been here, we've tried to fund it half with cash resources, which has been the Capital Reserve Fund, and half bonds. We may have switched it recently. I can't remember now if it's all bonds. I know that
I'm looking at it this year. It was half and half, but looking to be.
Yeah, that's what we try to do on an ongoing basis. I had a, hold on, let me think. So when I first started here, that project was not spending all of the funds that we had assigned, so there was a balance in it. That may have changed now, and it may be that they're being spent as their program. So I think there was one year where we didn't add any extra funds in because they had a balance left in their appropriation authority to spend. That said, if you're going to add to this project, I would try to keep the half and half mix. Any improvement that's expected to have a long life could do bond funds, but we have to consider that along with all the other bonded projects we have. And if it's going to push us over our debt limit, what do we reduce? So as we think about, we need more sidewalks, we're going to add more bond funds to this project, you're going to have to think of where else you might want to take away. I know I haven't seen the whole capital improvement plan for next year. There are some additional bond funds programmed there, so we're probably going to have to go through this exercise of analyzing the requests and what gets funded and what may not. So that's where we're at now. You'd probably have to think about what you wanted to remove if you wanted to stay within your policy.
Alderman Arnett.
Yes, going back to sidewalk repairs and the city code, we really do have a very mixed approach. The code clearly says that the property owner is responsible for their frontage, although the frontage.
I think it's not frontage. I think it's any abutting. So if it's on your
abutting
side,
streets,
yeah.
right? But for example, my sidewalks were repaired in part by BG&E when we did the repiping of gas and Main Street. I didn't pay anything. Lots of times a sidewalk will be in such bad repair that it presents a trip and fall, and the city comes out and repairs sidewalks. I don't know that there is a charge for that. I've never heard anyone being charged for the city coming out in the triage, right? And then on the other hand, we have the code that says that the property owner is responsible. So I think in addition to the budget, and I would like to address all of the multiple facets of sidewalks, we might need there's the code and then there's the practice. I personally like the practice better. The Public Works is very good about coming out and taking care of dangerous situations, but that isn't the code. And every time we get into sidewalks, we come out with our constituents, and everyone has a different point of view. Many of the people on Chester Avenue like the extended lawn and don't want sidewalks installed. Well, I'm sorry, this is a life safety issue and it's a trip and fall kind of an issue, but I'm not sure we really are practicing in a clear way, which opens the door for different residents to ask for or interpret things differently. And maybe we need to spend some time as legislators thinking about all of that. And of course, we would need a tremendous amount of input from Public Works to figure out how we won't shoot ourselves in the foot by changing this. But quite frankly, I think that sidewalks are part and parcel of the streetscape. Sidewalks, curbs, streets. I think the city, for example, when I got bids to do the repair for 2 sections of sidewalks in front of my house, the lowest one was $2,000. I know the city can do it cheaper than that and according to code, because you would put in the right rebar and all of that sort of thing. So I don't know what the cost would be of doing that. I suspect it would be fairly spectacular. On the other hand, we can guarantee consistency and safety and installation of missing sidewalks, and we can address the variable cost of the different materials that sidewalks are made of. So, but I think that's a legislative issue and will, of course, be a budget issue as well. But we do have a mixed approach now, and it is confusing to residents. I get many irate calls. Why isn't the city fixing my sidewalk? And when I tell them that's your responsibility, I hear, never mind. Anyway.
I do want to circle back to that. I think it is the city's responsibility to repair a sidewalk. So you may be passing on not quite accurate information there.
It's just
Also, I would like to clarify, we are not responsible for driveway aprons. So
Right.
driveway aprons
Driveway
will
aprons are
intersect the sidewalk. We are not responsible for the driveway aprons for private driveways. So a lot of times the driveway aprons will intersect the sidewalk, so you'll be crossing over someone's driveway. The driveway apron is the responsibility of the property owner. Sidewalks are the responsibility of Public Works for repair.
I'm glad you pointed that out. And if our wonderful budget manager is listening, I will ask him to switch out the photo in our CIP because I noticed it is of a driveway apron, the one for general sidewalks, which would not be covered by the CIP. So we'll make sure we get that fixed up, I think, in the next budget.
Could I circle back to your question, this being the Finance Committee? I think it was a great question about bond funding, right?
Yeah, I'd love to hear your opinion too.
And so my thoughts there are, I think it's a valuable exercise to discuss with the finance director, the city manager, even the incoming mayor when we get a new mayor, and talk about really what is our appetite for debt service. What do we feel is an appropriate amount of interest to be paying every year, given that we have, let's say, a pretty consistent baseline of I would think, $10 million of capital improvements, which, of course, if you need to issue bonds for a large one-time kind of expense, let's say a new water plant or something like the Pitt Moyer Rec Center, you wouldn't likely have the cash reserves to be able to fund something like that. So that's, to me, right, and just in my opinion as a citizen, a clear situation where bond funding, no question, that's what you do for those maybe once in a decade, once in a generation kind of large ticket expenses. But for the stuff that's a recurring baseline of smaller projects, we have the option to fund that with capital reserve or cash of some sort, or to seek bond funding. And there are all these guidelines of you can what debt affordability is, and we have all of that. But just because we can afford it doesn't necessarily mean over the long term it's really the right decision. So changing course on that, I recognize is not easy once you have a certain debt load. Now all of a sudden you might be kind of stuck with that unless you really have an appetite for either increasing revenues or dialing back the amount of capital expenses. So that's a little bit off topic for sidewalks, but just in general, as we look at our capital programs and how we want to fund that, with interest no longer being 1 or 2% out there, we might want to be just mindful of the amount of particularly interest burden that we take on.
Absolutely.
Can I make a quick observation on that? Two observations.
I think you will either way.
Actually, it's propitious that we have our two nominees for the FACT here because the debt service and affordability, and I do have some spending affordability legislation coming up that they will be part of. So I appreciate you staying to go through this, but it turns out it's a good thing that you did. But if the city, we changed Title 14 and the city is now responsible for the streets, sidewalk, curb, and street, then I think we don't have to go to the state as Alderwoman Finlayson. Then I think we can legitimately add a fee for sidewalk maintenance and even And by the way, my driveway apron was the worst offender in terms of being upheaved because there was a tree right by. I share it with my neighbor, and that would have been even more expensive than $2,000. But I think that we're talking about some pretty fundamental legislative considerations as well as budget considerations. But should we decide to do that, we are going to need to know in those deliberations what kind of additional cost. I actually think the city spends a lot of money doing trip and fall repairs now. So I'm not sure if we took over the full responsibility, how much more it would cost, but I think it's probably a price worth paying. And I think it's kind of the expectations of the citizens. They expect police and they expect street repairs, and I think they expect sidewalk repair too. They don't know, by and large, that it's their responsibility.
So again, let's just be clear. Maintenance, citizen responsibility. Repair, city responsibility. Let's just make sure we're distinguishing those two. Alderwoman Finlayson, I see your hand, but I want to stick on this topic of how these are being paid for. Going back to your answer, Director Dickinson, I was asking about this and you said, okay, we could sort of think about how we blend it between bonds and capital reserve. What about PAYGO? Is that a category that we should be thinking about some of these funds coming from as well?
As it stands, the Capital Reserve Fund is a result of excess funds saved during the year, and it funnels in there. And so far, we've been able to replenish it annually, and it's been a few $1 million. PAYGO is you're actually using tax dollars and deciding we're going to use tax dollars to send over to capital every year. They're both kind of a cash-funded source. I think that depending on what happens in the general fund this year, I haven't seen the first go-around of the budget, but if you're going to do something like that, you would consider seeking more tax revenue to pay for it. I don't know where it would come from. Otherwise, you'd have to start cutting from other expenses in other departments to do it. So I'm just saying that you can.
Yeah.
We could trim other places and free up actual PAYGO funding.
But okay,
And I think
that's
that
helpful.
kind of goes back and echoes what Director Vogel was saying
Right.
about an appetite for increased revenue.
And I think it goes back to Alderman Arnett's point of what are truly essential city services, and in my mind, sidewalks have got to be one of them. Alderwoman Finlayson, did you have another question?
I did, Mr. Chair. It's probably out of order now, but going back to Mr. Vogel's comment, I just want to be clear, when we're talking about increasing revenue, we're talking about raising taxes. I think we should be clear. We can use any kind of terminology we want, but that's really what we're talking about. My question is the standard for measuring replacement for CIP items 20 years? Or am I confusing sidewalks with roadways?
I think you might be confusing sidewalks with roads.
So
I think that, go on.
Is there a timeline when we expect to replace sidewalks?
We haven't established that as a standard in the city.
And I think what Director Vogel was saying earlier is that part of that is because there is significantly more variability with sidewalks than with roadways, because they could last a very long time, and sometimes they last not very long times, depending on how they're installed and what's around them.
Well, I understand all of that. But my question relates back to prior experiences. We did have timelines when we knew that the life expectancy of our sidewalks, not unlike our highways or our streetways, were limited to a certain period. And the fact that we have none at all helps to create the dynamic that we're concerned about now, because now it's kind of arbitrary and not in a negative way, because we have these consultants doing the evaluations. But I'm not sure that everyone is treated the same. So I think there needs to be a process in place so that it is reliable and dependable for the residents as well as for us as the representatives. So,
Director
thank you.
Dickinson, I see your hand up. Did you have a response to that?
I was going to comment on the general policy for capital projects and the lives. Our bonds are typically paid over 20 years. So the average life of the assets that you fund with bonds shouldn't be any less than 20 years, meaning you can have some 30 years and you could have some 10 years in there, but as long as they balance to 20 years, you're okay. But with sidewalks, some of those fixes are probably shorter term. So that's why we try to mix the cash in with the bonds.
Thank you.
And I would just like to offer something with respect to the topic of kind of fairness and right. Are we treating everyone the same? I do believe the asset evaluations that we do can speak to that, right? And I think it works reasonably well in the paving program. You know, we see when we get something down to if it's a residential street, if it's a zero, we really don't want things to be zeros for very long. And we don't want to see a lot of zeros. And we can apply that same sort of logic to the sidewalks, where we see we have a deficiency or areas where there's a lot of very low rated sidewalks. That indicates we should probably put some more resources into that area.
Where can folks find that assessment? Is it on the city's website?
I don't think so.
No, that program's for internal use.
It's a large database, but we could export a file.
Yeah, I would love to see that if it would be appropriate. I mean, I would like to see it, and if it would be appropriate, I would like to share it.
I would just like to add that our concrete sidewalk repair program follows our paving program. So that's
Right.
Today, right? But if we're talking about, again, expanding, the amount of money we're spending on sidewalk repairs, we could be doing concrete sidewalk repairs separately from our roadway repairs. That's just our current practice, but doesn't mean, and that's where that's sort of the affordability leads us in that direction. But we could, with additional resources, do more concrete sidewalk repair.
And we have ongoing sidewalk repair that's funded through our operating budget. So I just want to remind everybody and all the constituents that if you know of a sidewalk repair that needs to occur, please let us know through our Submit a Problem portal, and then we can create a work order to have that sidewalk repaired.
Sure. And that, yeah, actually, could you talk a little bit more about the distinction between operating budget sidewalk repair and capital budget sidewalk repair?
Sure. Our operating budget, you can think of those as largely as city crews. So, and those are the things, or just like a pothole, right? So we've got a streets program line item in the budget, and those are folks who are out there responding largely to citizen requests for sidewalk repairs and potholes.
So that falls under the street. I think it's like a streets line item.
Correct.
Budget, correct.
That is
Yeah.
correct. Right. And so, of course, you'll find it in the two different budget books. One for these capital repairs, another in the operating fund, and the streets falls under the services superintendent.
But in the operating budget, correct me if I'm wrong here, but this is just what I was looking at. In the operating budget, we do not distinguish between sidewalks and roadways in the same way that we do in the capital budget. Is that correct?
I think that's correct.
Do you think?
Don't hold me to that, but that's the way I remember the budget.
That's how I remember it. You look like you had something to add. Oh, okay. Is that?
And to be clear, these two folks are in our engineering and construction division, so they are not
Sure. necessarily
experts on the operating side of things out in the services department.
I understand you're working on a different kind of numbers, but
But we coordinate.
sure.
Yeah.
Feel free to stop me and say that if this question is a question best answered by the city attorney. But what liability does the city have legally for these kinds of trip and fall concerns? When I have a resident say to me, "These bricks are all messed up. The city's going to get sued over it."
And we do.
Okay, maybe let's put a pin in
Yeah.
this, or have the city attorney come and answer it. So part of what I think we've been getting at here is that the sidewalk repairing concrete and the sidewalk repairing bricks, very different. How would it impact you all if we split those out into 2 capital improvement projects in the budget? And then separately, how would it impact you if we split those out into 2 performance metrics?
Both would be reasonable to me. I see no problem with that.
Okay, great. That was an easy answer. Alderwoman Finlayson?
Yes, well, to follow up with that comment, how does bricking Main Street correlate to bricking sidewalks in Ward 1?
Bricking Main Street is a separate capital improvement project. And it's its own thing.
And my question is, how does that relate to the sidewalks on Main Street?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Good question. So to maybe rephrase it, whenever we do the rebricking of Main Street, will that include rebricking the sidewalks?
Not necessarily. But that's a complicated question as it pertains to, are we going to make geometric changes to Main Street when we do that rebricking, which relates to what are we doing on Duke of Gloucester.
Got it.
Now, I would think that we'd want to determine that in the status quo as it is, before we can predict what changes will be made. I would think we'd have to have a baseline of what it takes to maintain it as it is. But that's not what I just heard you say. You said it depends on whether we're going to change Main Street and Duke of Gloucester. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I'm following the question. Could you maybe rephrase?
Your answer was, it depends on what we do with Main Street, whether we change the direction of Main Street and Duke of Gloucester. Did I miss?
Correct, right. And that my answer was in response to the question of, will we definitively rebrick the sidewalks at the same time as we take care of the driving parts of Main Street? And my answer there is, we don't know right now.
That really was not my question. My question simply was, when we redo the street, are the sidewalks on Main Street included as part of that?
I'm going to give the same answer. We do not know right now.
And the reason you're saying you don't know is because there is a proposal out there to change the direction of Main Street. And I was asking that we come up with a determination for as it is today, before we try to predict what it might be tomorrow. But I know it's easier to not have an answer today, which is what I'm seeking. But let me move on to my other request, and I think Alderman Huntley has made this, but I want to be clear. Will we get a copy of the sidewalk schedule that will show us where the sidewalks are in the city that need repair or some sort of maintenance? And likewise, will we get that for the highways, for our roadways? That's what I'm interested in having.
Okay, I'll address those 2 points. One, Alderman Huntley had mentioned the condition assessment, which is not quite a schedule. It is just simply an evaluation of the sidewalks. We will share that with the committee. Secondly, a schedule. Right now, the sidewalk program follows the paving program. So the paving program schedule, which is posted on our website, is the schedule, and that runs, I believe, 2024, 2025, 2026, and 2027. New schedule will be published sometime in the 2026 timeframe.
Thank you.
So if the roadways need repair, then the sidewalks are going to need repair? Or if it's...
That's correct. That's correct. So if we use, I think we've just recently done a number of streets in Eastport. Those are fresh in my mind. Let's take 2nd Severn. And so Severn's been repaved. A number of the sidewalks along Severn that needed to be repaired or replaced were done at that same time. And that is exactly the way we do this throughout the city. When a street comes up for repaving, the sidewalks are given a very close and detailed evaluation, like we're going to replace this square or we're going to replace, repair something or a curb.
Okay, well, that does make sense. I guess my concern is, in my ward, for example, Copeland Street has been moved down the list. Copeland Street was supposed to be repaved in 2024, I believe, maybe 25. And now it's been bumped out to a later time. I don't recall when. And there has never been an answer as to why they were taken out of a more recent rotation.
So I can only speak to the paving program since I've been the director, which I guess now is coming up on 2 years this summer. The program that we have is the only paving program that I've ever been involved in developing. And in that program, Copeland was in 2026. Since we were able to make some really good progress in 2024 and 2025, as well as the BGE work that we were just talking about, some things are being shifted around and Copeland will be paved this year. Probably quite soon.
Well, that's great. That's the bottom line I wanted to hear. We did Royal Street because it was down to gravel. And there was a plan that included Royal and Copeland Street. So I'm glad to hear that it's being put back in a more timely rotation. So thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing those lists for both highway or streetways and sidewalks. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I see we have one of our assistant city attorneys here. Thank you so much for coming up. My question, which we realized as I was asking it would be better answered by you, what liability does the city have in regards to people who might trip and fall on our sidewalks?
If it's something that is a condition that is dangerous that the city knows about and we don't have anything to warn, then the city could be liable for it. If it is a condition that we don't have notice for, then obviously there's going to be defenses for that.
Got it. And could you just give us a little bit more detail on sort of how aware we would be? Obviously, if someone writes a letter to the mayor and says, or to Director Vogel and says, this is horribly dangerous, here's really good examples of how it's dangerous, that's pretty clear cut. If there's sidewalk in front of City Hall that we've never gotten a letter about, but that we know most of the employees walk over, is that an amount of having known about it?
So typically, the way that the sidewalks are monitored, it is typically a complaint-based notice. So it's not reasonable to think that the city is going to be aware of absolutely everything that's happening on all the sidewalks. That's not realistic. But if it's something where there was a prior issue, we got a notice of claim, there was a letter, like you said, there were conversations internally and nothing happened about it, then we would obviously have a bit of an uphill battle when it comes to liability.
Got it. Thank you. Anybody else have questions on that topic? Because I think it's a really interesting one. Anything you folks want to add about it? No? Okay. I got 2 more questions, and then hopefully we can get out of here at a reasonable time. Unless Alderman Arnett has more to say. So we were talking about BGE earlier, or I guess it would mainly be BGE. I'm not sure who else would need to tear up our sidewalks. In the event that happens, how do we handle having those replaced? Is it just BGE does it? Do they provide us with funding? I know we were talking a little while ago about this for streets and having an MOU with BGE around getting streets repair when they need to tear them up. Can you just walk us through what that looks like if they need to tear up a sidewalk?
Any one of us?
You want to go? Yeah.
Sure. So there's kind of 2 approaches, right? One is BGE, you clean up after yourselves, completely independent of the city. They can repair a section of road and or sidewalk as needed. The other approach is we come up with a shared responsibility, a financial one, and BGE's. We just ask BGE to pay us cash, and we can take care of it. And what's nice about that is then we might do an entire block. We can get a better final result, pooling our financial responsibilities together. And we kind of prefer that second approach where it makes sense.
Right. I know
we just ask BGE to give us money, then we spend it.
Yeah. Sure.
Fair?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
The last thing I wanted to talk about is contracting and the contracting procedures that we use for repairing particularly brick sidewalks. So, and again, I know you guys are on the engineering side, so apologies if this is outside your wheelhouse. But when a sidewalk is getting rebricked, I'm correct in understanding it's typically not city employees doing that, right? We contract that out.
Yes.
Mix? Really?
I think,
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
It tends to be it's small, right? So it's going to be the city crews taking care of a small, limited scope, the kind of thing that might take 1 to 5 days, let's say, for a crew of 3 or 4. An entire block, that's going to be contracted, and that's going to be the kind of thing that Allison manages.
Got it. Yeah, I think we had a situation on Franklin Street where it was just like folks had to access the water main. It was maybe 16 square feet, something like that. And I would imagine that's a situation where city crews came out and fixed it. I think I saw that happening. In the situation, though, where we are contracting it out, what kinds of contracts are we using, and how does the process, how do we evaluate the cost effectiveness? Are we actually getting good competition with those contracts? Just tell me some more about what that contracting process looks like, please.
So right now, with this. So right now we have a contract with 2 contractors, and it's a renewable contract, so that it's renewed for 4 years, and then it would go back out to bid. And right now we're in the 2nd year cycle of that. So we pretty much have them do those 2 contractors.
They're
and they can do
unit
both.
priced.
They can do both brick and concrete. We also sometimes we'll utilize our road program.
Sorry, say that again. We somebody use the what?
Well, we will utilize our contractors for the road program too.
Oh, gotcha. Sure.
But utilizing the sidewalk funds.
Right.
So sometimes, we have 3 contractors that we can utilize, and we'll pick and choose based on what we know about those contractors and their ability to perform the work that we want them to perform within the cost that we want.
And then are they getting paid in a cost plus contract? Or are they getting paid on a fixed price kind of contract?
Unit
What's that look like?
Do you understand what I mean when I said unit price?
Unit price.
So it's a complete, fully burdened cost, right? To replace 1 square foot of sidewalk.
Okay, so per square foot is the unit
per square
unit
foot,
cost
right.
contract. Interesting. And of course, they have different rates for brick versus for concrete.
And then your granite curb downtown is another fairly expensive line item.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd love. It's not worth doing it here, but I'd love to dig into those contracts and look at how we do that. That's procurement, and especially like unit price procurement is a lot of what I do in my day job. So I'd totally nerd out over that with you, not on a live meeting. But okay, thanks for giving me the baseline on that. With that, you guys have been wonderful. Thank you for coming here and educating us. Unless I see any further questions from my colleagues, I really want to thank you guys for being here. This has been super illuminating. It was just what I wanted to have. And we appreciate how hard you work to make sure everybody is safe in this city. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and I managed to finish up, as I always do, right when Director Dickinson steps out of the room. So we don't have her for her finance chair report. But thank you guys for being here. And just again, appreciate all the great work you do. Just wait one moment. I'm sure Director Dickinson will be back and we can hear her finance department update, but I know she emailed it to us as well. What? Oh. I think that's part of it. Yeah. I think it is both that and city dock, but with the pushback of the sprinklers, who knows? I guess what I'm saying is now that we've pushed back the sprinklers, I don't think we can keep waiting on the. Well, thank you, Joe. No, she's not. Okay. It's nope. You're good. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. I'll hold us open for another 2 minutes for Director Dickinson to come back, but if not, we do have her report in writing. Like I said, we'll just wait a couple minutes. If we don't see her, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I'm looking for her report. I see an email, but there's nothing attached.
That's actually a very good point. I had not opened it up. I'm in the same situation. So yes, we really do need to wait for her to come back. She left her water in her laptop here. She'll be back in a moment. I guess she thought we were going to keep talking about sidewalks even longer. Yeah, there we go. You're good. I know you could have thought we were going to talk about it for another couple hours, but we are ready for the finance director's report. And I also noticed that we don't have your in your emailed one. It wasn't attached. So if you wouldn't mind just resending that.
Turn this on. The financial report, the ACFR, should be done within the next few days. We're just wrapping up the final changes and getting the final reviews from the auditors. Our new finance director starts on March 27th, so that's a week or so away. I'm at that point in time, I'm going to move to a contractual role for transition, at least maybe here through the end of the year. And the end of the fiscal year, and then beyond that, we don't know yet what role I'm going to play, if any. I've been reviewing applicants for the assistant finance director, but I'm hoping to involve the new director in the selection of that person. And still short on the accounts payable staff. We've had them. Our staff has been going in and out for medical stuff, so we're shorthanded there. So I'm worried about the impact on that process. On the budget side, I don't have to tell you they're on their final stages and probably frantically working a lot of overtime to pull the numbers together. We'll be looking at that over the next couple weeks and getting the numbers nailed down to get the legislation to you I think it's April 14th. And that's about it. Just that we still no plans to issue debt, at least until the fall. That's it. That's what I have on my list. I don't know if you have any other questions.
No, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate the update. Alderwoman Finlayson, any questions?
No, I just like to have a copy of the report. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm sure Director Dickinson will get that to us.
Yeah, right now. I'm going to do it right now.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I will move to adjourn.
I will second it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Excellent. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.
Be well. That would be for me.